Hello friends, and in this video, this from Chambers actually, and this video will be about the fourth component of our pharmacokinetic study, that is of the ADME study we talked about in the last video, that absorption, distribution, metabolism, and today we will be talking more about the excretion and some elimination, some kinetics. The most important and very confusing thing, the topic is kinetics, and I will try my best to explain it in a very cool, calm, and smooth way. Okay. So we have our friends joining with me, Sunaina, Sunali, Kunwar, Kampavat. Okay. So maybe some other students will also join. So this is a live session, and we will be talking about. But before starting this, I want to say something about those enzymes, which where we ended in the last video. Okay, so let us share the screen. See, my dears, there is one concept which I want you to know about smoking. About smoking is that in the smoking concept, we said in the past video that we have inducers of microsomal enzymes, we have inhibitors of microsomal enzymes, meaning thereby the inducers of microsomal enzymes are going to increase the genetic expression of those microsomal enzymes, those cytochrome families. And if I am talking about the inhibition of the microsomal enzymes, it means that I am decreasing the gene expression of those microsomal enzymes, and thus my drug will not be metabolized more. But if I have an increased genetic expression of microsomal enzyme, it will mean that I will be having more enzymes, means I will be metabolizing more things in less amount of time. That means I will be decreasing the effect of the drug, isn't it? So I want to say something about smoking. What smoking is actually, I want to tell you an association about smoking, that the smoking, which smoking can be anything. I'm saying about this cigarette smoke. So in the cigarette smoking, what does cigarette contain? Anyone? What does it contain? Who can tell us? Which chemical compound? It contains actually a chemical group, that is benzyl pyridine. It contains a chemical compound, that is benzyl pyridine. What these benzyl pyridines are? These benzyl pyridines are actually the enzyme inducers. They are the inducers of cytochrome enzyme. Which type of cytochrome? I will mention it clearly, 1A2. So it means once I am smoking something, that is if I am smoking a benzyl pyridine, it will increase the genetic expression of cytochrome 1A2, and it will be giving me more amount of cytochromes 1A2. Once I have more amount of cytochromes, so can I say smokers? Can I say smokers? Can I make a statement today? This is my own statement. Smokers, no, I don't know whether it's written in a book or not, but I remember like this. Smokers have high cytochrome 1A2 levels. Okay, smokers have high cytochrome 1A2 levels. Means my substrate will be metabolized with more. My substrate will be metabolized more. That means I will be having the decreased plasma concentration. I will be having the decreased plasma concentration of my those substrates which are metabolized by 1A2. One of the example I can give is theophylline. Your theophylline are present in your tea. Okay, so theophylline, this compound, if you are taking the more, if you are a smoker and you are taking theophylline, your levels of theophylline, because theophylline is a substrate, and your inducer, you are using what? Smoking, isn't it? It's an aromatic hydrocarbon, isn't it? Benzyl pyridine is an aromatic hydrocarbon, and you will be having more amount of, isn't it? Are we clear? So my substrate levels of the theophylline will decrease. So this is the basic concept you should know as being a physician, that what smoking can do with this substrate. I want to discuss one more thing, is that we have a compound, that is tyramine. This tyramine is present in your cheese, in red wine, in fish, in bear, whatnot. Okay. So what is this tyramine, this compound, is that it is metabolized by your monoamine oxidase, an enzyme. Okay. For example, you have your, and this is an exogenous amine which you are taking. This is your exogenous amine, and we have endogenous amines also. We have endogenous amines also. What is the endogenous amine? We have dopamine, we have norepinephrine, we have serotonin, isn't it? So what are those? They are neurotransmitters, isn't it? So they are also metabolized by the same enzyme. Okay. So you have to remember this thing. I will be discussing more about this in the sympathetic nervous system, about in the ANS, but just remember right now that Mao is, metabolizing this. Okay. By the way, can you tell me a disease from the pathology which has a problem with glucuronide transferase? Can you tell me a disease from pathology? There's a disease. What is the disease? Crigler-Najjar. Crigler-Najjar syndrome. Crigler-Najjar. Or what else? What else? Gilbert, isn't it? Gilbert. Okay, we are clear. Can you tell me something about acetylation? Acetylation mechanism. You have to remember one important point from your entrance point of view. That is the acetylation. Acetylation, we have two, in our genetic population, we have two categories of people. This is actually a topic of pharmacogenetics. Pharmacogenetics. What I will summarize it in a very simple way. Divide your population into two types. One population is that which is metabolizing fastly. They are called fast acetylators. And another population is that which is slowly acetylating things. So you are one of you may have an acetylation genetically that you fastly acetylate things. And I am having a slow acetylation. Okay, this is called a genotypic variation, pharmacogenetic variations, or genotypic variation. Okay, so what will happen is, if I am a fast acetylator, that means I will acetylate fast. That means I will, my substrates will get consumed very fast. That means my plasma effective concentration of drug will decrease. Contrary to that, if I have a slow acetylation means I will have less acetylation, means I will be doing slowly acetylating, means I will be having more amount of drug which is not getting metabolized, isn't it? There is a problem that some people you know who are slow acetylators, they have a condition that is known as drug induced SLE. What is induced SLE? It is drug-induced systemic lupus erythematosus. Systemic lupus erythematosus. So these people are having what? They are having this. So which drugs cause drug-induced lupus? This question will be asked in your exam. Okay. The drugs are SHIP drugs. It's a famous mnemonic. SHIP. SHIP drugs cause systemic lupus erythematosus. Which type? Drug-induced. Which type? Drug-induced. Okay. Are we able to understand? Can you tell us which enzyme is actually metabolizing them, by the way? Anyone of you? Which enzyme metabolizes these drugs? Everyone knows SHIP, but which enzyme? The enzyme is acetyltransferase. Who metabolizes them? Acetyltransferase. Okay, and acetyltransferase will convert your all. What is this SHIP? By the way, I forgot to tell you. SHIP is as for sulfonamide. H for hydralazine. I for isoniazid. P for procainamide. Okay, these are the drugs which are metabolized by. Okay, I will understand. Now tell me one thing. These are causing drug-induced lupus. How will you differentiate a patient who is having a drug-induced lupus? And we also have a natural variety of butterfly marrow rash, isn't it? That is, what is that? What is that? Natural, no, the natural systemic lupus erythematosus. So how will you distinguish a patient whether he's having a drug-induced systemic lupus erythematosus or he's having a natural mallar rash? Okay, so I will tell you how to do it. Simple as that. A very logical thing, that if you get a patient, if they tell you in your question, if they are telling you that a patient has a butterfly rash, a patient has a butterfly rash and he has a positive ANA, he has a positive ANA, he will mention like this, I hope. And what he will say, and he will say, now tell me, is it a drug induced lupus or is it a natural antibodies causing the lupus? So since you can appreciate that ANA, anti-nuclear antibodies, those are the anti-histone antibodies, since they are showing plus sign, that is they are present, and the patient is also taking the drug, there at that time you can say the patient is having drug induced lupus. Okay sir, drug induced lupus. How to test it again? Just stop the drug. Just stop the drug. Right now you were not sure, you were actually thinking that he is having a drug induced lupus. Okay sir, but now confirmation, gold standard, like something that you are able to differentiate it at that time is directly see if the patient said, if the question is saying that patient has, he has withdrawn the drug now, he's not taking it anymore, and his rashes have gone. If that has happened, then definitely as a common sense, it should be able to tell us that the patient is having a drug induced lupus. Why he is having a drug induced lupus? Because drug was actually causing the butterfly rash, and after the patient withdraw the treatment, he was normal. The butterfly rash disappeared. Remember this point. How to check? Directly see the drug. If with the drug rash is coming, drug induced lupus. If with the drug rash is not coming, then it should be should be something with the hypersensitivity reactions happening except the drug, isn't it? How will to understand? So this is the most important point I wanted to tell you. Okay. Okay. Now tell me one thing. Which condition is for phenobarbital contraindicated? Which conditions have phenobarbital contraindication? In which places I can't give phenobarbital, the barbiturate? I have taught in the previous video, that is acute intermittent porphyria. Acute intermittent porphyria, isn't it? I am writing it fast because I've already mentioned it in the previous videos. Okay. So acute intermittent porphyria, phenobarbital is contraindicated. Why contraindicated, sir? Because it is the inducer of delta ALA synthase. What is happening is once you are inducing this, you will be producing more porphyrins. That patient is already having porphyria. So this drug is absolute contraindication for acute intermittent porphyria. I tell you one condition, okay? I have a pathological disease, since you all have read pathology, you're from second year. We had two variants of Crigler-Najjar syndrome. We had type 1 and we had type 2. We had type 1, we had type 2. So both are Crigler-Najjar. Both is the deficiency of, UGT. But what is the problem? In type in type 1, do we have complete or incomplete absence? Tell us which is having the highest amount. Who is having the partial deficiency? Who is having the partial deficiency? Which Crigler-Najjar has partial deficiency? Crigler-Najjar 1 or Crigler-Najjar 2? I tell you, I want to differentiate type 1 and type 2. So what you will give? You will start giving phenobarbital. This phenobarbital will tell me whether it is a type 1 or type 2. Okay. So you will be using always, now they will ask you, will you give phenobarbital? It's an absolute contraindication that I can't give in type of, this Crigler-Najjar 1 or 2. They will tell you, can I give phenobarbital for type 2? You should write, yes, we can give it for type 2. Phenobarbital can be used for type 2 Crigler-Najjar syndrome. Why? Because type 1 is having the complete deficiency of UGT. Type 1 is that Crigler-Najjar which is having the absolute deficiency. You don't have anything. Okay. But type 2, type 2, we have something. We have partial deficiency of UGT. That's why we can give. Are you able to understand? Because what is it doing? Phenobarbital is actually glucuronidation inducer, isn't it? It is inducing your glucuronidation. So you want to make more conjugated or unconjugated bilirubin, for example, isn't it? I'm not talking about acute intermittent porphyria. That is a different case. Please don't confuse it with acute intermittent porphyria. That was a separate thing. Right now, I am talking about if a patient, I have two patients. One patient is Crigler-Najjar CN1. I will say in short CN1. One patient is CN1. Another patient is CN2. What is happening that a question is asked to you where since we said phenobarbital is an inducer of UGT, isn't it? It's an inducer of UGT. So will a phenobarbital therapy be useful for CN1 or CN2? It will never be useful for CN1. Why? We have absolute genetic deficiency of UGT, isn't it? Glucuronide transferase is absolutely absent. I don't have, so what will I induce if I can't stimulate my genes? How can you help that person to conjugate? Isn't it? So what you are doing is in the Crigler-Najjar 2, you are using UGT is useful for Crigler-Najjar 2. Why? Because Crigler-Najjar 2 is that type of syndrome in which you have partial deficiency, you have some little amount of UGT and you can increase. So you can express the genes, you can tell the genes to make more, isn't it? So in that case, you will be increasing the, helping in the conjugation of that person. Okay. Okay. So can I say phenobarbital is a diagnostic test? Can I say phenobarbital is a diagnostic test? Can I say it is having a differentiating me in helping me differentiate the T1 and type 2? Don't take it as MRI. It's T1 and T2 Crigler-Najjar syndrome. Okay. So that means if your bilirubin, so what is the case in Crigler-Najjar? You have hyperbilirubinemia and you have mostly the unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. That is, you are having more amounts of bilirubin, meaning thereby, if I am giving an enzyme to conjugate the bilirubin, my unconjugated bilirubinemia will decrease. I will have hypo-unconjugated bilirubinemia. And with that, if I am giving a drug to a patient of type 1 Crigler-Najjar syndrome, that drug will not be able to do anything. That drug will not increase the enzyme, UGT. Once I am not able to increase the enzyme, that means my unconjugated bilirubin will not get converted into conjugated bilirubin. That means I will be still having what? Unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. But a patient of type 2 Crigler-Najjar syndrome will be having some, there will be a variation of the conjugated bilirubin, isn't it? Your conjugated bilirubin will start get increased once you are giving a phenobarbital. Now, to conclude this thing, to make sense out of this thing, now tell me in short, where will you be using the phenobarbital? Type 1 Crigler-Najjar or type 2? That's a beautiful answer. Type 2 Crigler-Najjar you will be using because it will be helpful. You will be inducing the genes, you'll be increasing the UGT. Once the UGT increases, you will be having metabolism of this conjugation of this unconjugated bilirubin. I hope there is no problem with this. So phenobarb will be useful in type 2 Crigler-Najjar syndrome. Type 2 Crigler-Najjar syndrome. That's very much, very nice conceptual integration about the pathology and pharmacology. Okay. Okay, let us start like this. Excretion. Okay, it is that ADME, the last of this ADME excretion. So what is happening? What is excretion? Your major routes, we have various routes of excretion. Majorly your kidney is doing the excretion, isn't it? Kidney. So what phases do we see in excretion from the physiology? How many phases? We have 3 phases. What? Glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, tubular secretion, isn't it? It can occur by glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion, isn't it? So what is glomerular filtration? Means glomerulus is filtering the drugs. That means glomerulus can filter both drugs. That means glomerulus can filter both drugs. It's not that it will only lipid soluble. Filter is just a filter. Anything can move through it. So glomerular filtration means I am filtering both lipid soluble and lipid insoluble drugs, isn't it? Filtering. Okay. Now, if you have, now tell me one thing, if you have more things connected with the plasma protein, you have more things connected with the plasma protein, you will have less filtration. Can I say there is an inverse relationship between filtration and plasma protein binding? If you are increasing your binding with the plasma protein, that means you won't be get filtered. You are actually remaining in the circulation for a longer period of time, isn't it? So I will say PBB is basically decreasing my filtration. If you are increasing the PPP, I have a decreased plasma protein binding. What is your normal glomerular filtrate rate? Around 120 ml per minute, isn't it? 120 to 125 ml per minute, normal. Okay. And how much amount of urine are you passing per day? Around 1.8 to 2 liters, isn't it? 1.8 to 2 liters per day. Okay. Okay. No, that is I'm talking about the output of urine. Okay. So let us then say about something about this. What to say? But what else can you take in the glomerular filtration? What else? Yes, glomerular filtration does now tell me, does it depend on the lipid solubility? No, it will not depend on the water soluble, but yeah, it will depend on the blood flow coming to the glomerulus. If we are increasing more blood flow, that means more will be filtered, isn't it? So it will depend on the PPB also, and it will depend on the blood flow to the renal system also, but it will not depend on the solubility or nature of something, because we have a glomerular membrane which has windows in it, isn't it? We have windows, fenestrations in the glomerular membrane. If I talk about this tubular reabsorption for the pharmacological point of view, if I have to reabsorb means I should be lipid soluble, because I have to absorb across the membrane. So I should have more lipid solubility. The more lipid soluble you are, the more you will get absorbed. The less lipid soluble you are, the less you will get reabsorbed. Means less will be excreted. If you are having more reabsorption, that means less will be excreted, isn't it? If you are absorbing, this is a glomerulus, and you are absorbing it back into the general circulation, that means less will be excreted. That means less will be excreted. And we know from the concept that if you are giving the same media, same drug, that is acidic media to the acidic drug, basic media to the basic drug, then definitely that will be able to, will it be able to get absorbed or not? Yeah, it will be absorbed in the same medium, because we have read in the absorption part very detailed video on absorption part. A full, I think 24 minutes, 25 minutes video I have talked about absorption, taught you the numericals, direct tricks to directly pass that in any AIIMS or any NEET PG exam. Okay. Now tell me one thing. A patient is having a drug poisoning. That's an important part about this. Drug poisoning. A patient is having a drug poisoning. For example, he has taken any acidic drug. Let us take a basic drug. Let us take an acidic drug which we see the people taking. For example, any salicylic poisoning, any aspirin poisoning. Okay, I take a salicylic. Now what will happen? The patient has taken more amount of salicylates. The patient is taking more amounts of salicylates. That means he has poisoning of the acidic drugs. He has poisoning of this acidic drug. What will you do to remove this drug? So you should give an alkalinizing agent. That means you can give antidote. What is the antidote? Sodium bicarbonate. So if you have an acidic drug poisoning, you can give what? You have to give basic drug. You have to give a base, not a drug. You have to give a base, okay? Or alkali. And best is sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarb. And if a person has taken, for example, there is a basic drug poisoning, isn't it? There is a morphine poisoning or amphetamine poisoning. So what will happen? You have to acidify his urine. The urine should be acidified. And what will you give? Ammonium chloride, NH4Cl. You will give ammonium chloride for basic poisoning. Okay, how we will understand? These are most important points. So if you have an acidic drug poisoning, you should give an alkali, that is sodium bicarbonate. If you have a basic drug poisoning, you should give ammonium chloride. Okay, let us talk about the tubular secretion. What about the tubular secretion is? Tubular secretion means I'm secreting something. That means I'm using any transporter, or I am using any pump present on that membrane. Mostly know that in the proximal tubules, we are having the presence of some pumps, isn't it? We have pumps. So they will be secreting. But we know from the concepts of physiology that these pumps follow a kinetics, that is saturation kinetics. They follow a saturation kinetics, that is these pumps will saturate at some point. They will get overloaded, isn't it? Let me tell you one thing. Even if you say, sir, it will depend on the lipid soluble, never depends on the lipid soluble because we are concerned about the pumps. Sir, it depends on the plasma protein binding. How is it possible? Plasma protein is not there. Okay. So what is happening is the problem is created about this tubular secretion when you have a pump that is common for every drug. For example, if I have this pump uses this pump is used by penicillin. We're talking about the renal tubule, okay, the nephron. So if this pump is used by the penicillin and the same pump is being used by what? Probenecid. You know, probenecid you are using for uricose-uric action, isn't it? You increase the excretion of uric acid. Okay. So what is happening is this drug is having two sides, for example. What will happen is once you give a penicillin, once you give penicillin with probenecid, a patient is having for example, a urinary tract infection and he is also a patient of gout. Probenecid is a uricose-uric. Uricose-uric means it will increase the uric acid excretion or secretion in the urine. But penicillin you are taking as an antibiotic. So what will happen once you give these both will interact with this pump. And what will happen is probenecid is having the highest affinity for this pump. Probenecid is having the highest affinity for this pump. Will my penicillin get secreted in the urine? Because penicillin will also come in the urine because you are taking it and you have to excrete. It won't come in the urine. That means I have made what? What I have done? I have increased the plasma concentration of penicillin, isn't it? Okay. Now, normally what was happening? If I am giving this drug to this pump, that means if I have been giving drug to this pump, if it was a normal, if it had been a normally acting physiological pump, that means it was actually increasing the concentration of uric acid, isn't it? And it was removing the penicillin. But now what I am doing, I am decreasing the excretion of penicillin and increasing the excretion of uric acid. Are we able to understand? So the main concept is once I am giving both of them, you get uricose-uric action and penicillin increased in the circulation, the plasma concentration. Normally what was happening? I was retaining the uric acid. And I was throwing the penicillin in the urine. Are you able to understand? This should be basic crystal clear concept in your mind while reading any book. Okay. Let us talk about the kinetics, how we are eliminating something. We have to eliminate now. We have to terminate the drug action. We don't want the drug action to be there always. There should be a termination point so that drug action can be terminated. Okay. To understand the kinetics, you should first understand three concepts. One is the half-life, one is the clearance, another is the rate of elimination. Once you understand all the three terms, then you can very well understand the order of the kinetics. Which order is it following? So how I will take it is like this. For example, let us first talk about the rate of elimination. In the rate of elimination, what does it mean? Directly, rate means I have to take time. Okay, sir, taking time. Amount of drug. How much amount of drug you are eliminating per time. Directly put T. Even once you see rate, put T. Okay. Now, this is an organ. Famous example, taught by my seniors also. This is in, this is out, this is organ. What is happening? Drug is entering. Who is the primary metabolizing organ in your body? It is liver. So let us take the liver. So what is happening? Things are going inside. How much drug is going inside at some point of time? or you can say per unit time, and how much amount of drug is coming outside from that organ. So how much drug is entering the organ and how much drug is coming out, leaving the organ. That means it will depend on the rate of blood flow also. That means it will depend on the rate of blood flow also. That means I have to multiply my rate. I have to, if I have to calculate the rate actually from an organ, I have to multiply that there. For example, if I take a rate, a mathematical, that is how much amount is going inside the organ minus how much amount is coming out of the organ. How much amount of drug, isn't it? Enter and leave, enter and leave. If I minus them, if I subtract them, I will be getting the rate. That means drug is going with the blood, isn't it? So I should write the rate of blood flow as Q. So amount of drug entering, amount is always in concentration. So I will write A like this, concentration of A, minus blood flow multiplied by things coming out. That is what? How do the things come out? Vein, isn't it? Vein. So enters through the atrium, enters through the arteries, comes out through the veins. So can I write veins concentration? Final, my rate becomes QA in the concentration minus QV in the concentration. From the elementary chemistry I'm using. So this is clear. The rate of elimination is clear. So then what is clearance? This is the rate of, so what is clearance? Clearance means, let us write it like CL, commonly written like that. CL, clearance means what amount, please listen to my word, amount, what amount of plasma is getting cleared from the drug. How much amount of plasma is completely cleared off? How much amount of plasma is completely cleared off from that drug at a particular point? That means I should take the rate also inside, rate of elimination. That means I should say clearance is equal to from the plasma concentration, let us write like this, from the plasma concentration, how much amount is eliminated, that is rate of elimination. Can I write like this, out of plasma concentration, how much rate is eliminated, that will be telling me the clearance. So in short, you have to remember that clearance is equal to rate of elimination of that drug divided by that plasma concentration which now I have. Okay. So will I need in clearance the rate of blood flow? Yes, I will need the rate of blood flow. Will I need an extraction ratio? Yes, sir, I will need an extraction ratio. Now from this, from the half-life also, what is the half-life concept? Let me tell you a half-life concept. What is half-life? Half-life is half-life. First write like this. Half-life means what time do I take to become half of my value? For example, I gave a 100 mg drug. It got halved in 1 hour. So it became 50 mg. That means 1 hour is my half-life. Are you able to understand? So if I got, for example, 500 mg azithromycin and it got half into, for example, 1 hour or 6 hours. For example, it got half in 6 hours. Okay, it became 250 mg in 6 hours. That means my original value was 500 mg and now I have become 250 mg. That means the time which it took me to become 250 mg from 500 mg will be called my half-life. That is T half is equal to 6 hours. So easy concept and tasty subject. Now tell me one thing. If I have more enzymes, will my half-life decrease? If my metabolism is more, will my half-life decrease? Yeah, more and more metabolism will happen. My half-life will become less. Isn't it? Can it tell me also that at what time I have to give the dose? And how much time will I take to go to the steady state? What is the steady state? When my rate of taking the drug becomes equal to elimination, where the rate of administration becomes equal to elimination. That means plasma concentration follows a straight line. A stabilizing state is achieved, and this state is the steady state. And normally we say in our clinical life that we take at least five half lives to reach that steady state, because it depends on the T half, isn't it? It depends on the T half. So at what time, at what rate you are giving that dose will determine your steady state. I will be telling you in a moment. Please bear with me for this time. So T half we have understood, clearance we have understood, and we have also understood the rate of elimination. Now let us go to the kinetics. Let us go to the kinetics. Very smooth way we will study it. It's a very simple concept if you focus here. Just focus here. Whatever I'm going to say, listen to my words, what I am using and what I am telling. Now tell me one thing. Order. Our order of kinetics can be the order of kinetics. My order of kinetics, it can be either your drugs following. Either it can be a zero order or it can be a first order. It can be a zero order. It can be. So who is governing this? There's basically a formula who is governing this. It is a rate of elimination. A rate of elimination is directly proportional to your plasma concentration. Okay, raised to the power order. Now, order, you have to substitute the value. For example, the order is 0. So what will be the rate of elimination? Rate of elimination will become plasma concentration raised to the power 0. That means constant. Rate of elimination will remain constant. Can I say whatever you do to the plasma concentration, you won't be able to do anything to the rate of elimination? Is it true or not? That means it will become independent on the plasma concentration. That means it will become independent, because see, if you have something, I say you 50 for example 50 mg is proportional to 5 enzymes. That means if you increase the enzymes by factor of 5, you will have more reduction by 50 mg, isn't it? If you are increasing the 10 enzymes for 50 mg, that means you are doubling the enzymes. That means you are directly firstly decreasing the concentrations. Or if I say like this, let us take a simple example. If I tell you what is the concept of proportionality. The concept is once you increase from one side, your other things should also get proportionally changed. Proportionally changed, not disproportionately changed, not inversely proportional. So that means if I have a rate of elimination that is directly proportional to plasma concentration and it's raised to the power 0, anything raised to the power 0 is equal to 1. That means rate of elimination is independent of plasma concentration. Whatever you do here, you are still raised to the power 0. You can't do anything. So whatever you do to the plasma concentration, you won't be having any change with the rate of elimination. But then I will say rate of elimination becomes independent to plasma concentration. Or I can say rate of elimination is constant. Okay. But what happens in the first order is, if I take first raised to the power e, rate of elimination is directly proportional to plasma concentration. Order right now is 1. That means my rate of elimination becomes directly proportional to plasma concentration. That means if you increase the plasma concentration of these drugs, my rate of elimination will increase. Are we able to understand? By this concept, I want to show you mathematically what is happening. I want to show you mathematically what is happening. Okay. The mathematically thing I will tell you is like this. Let us differentiate them. Is it easy? It will be easy for us if we put it like school days that we used to put a difference between two. So in that way we will be able to understand more. So if I take this is a first order kinetics, and this is a second, it's not second, zero order kinetics. Zero order kinetics. Remember one thing. Always remember one thing. Just tell me first. We will go here. Let me make it clear like this. Tell me one thing. I have a drug that is 100 mg, and that 100 mg is becoming 50 mg in 1 hour. Okay, 1 hour, and then it is becoming 25, isn't it? Getting reduced to half in 1 hour, and then it is getting reduced to around 25 divided by 2 will become 12.5, isn't it? And this 12.5 divided by 2 will become around 625, so 6.25, isn't it? So that means how many half-lives it took me to reach 6.25. So 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 to 5 half-lives. So it takes me around 4 to 4 to 5 half-lives to reach a steady state. It takes me 4 to 5 half-lives to reach a steady state. What do we mean by that? What do we mean by that? Let me explain it like this. After that, we will be talking about this constant and all that. That is easy. That is an easy task. That's not a problem. But we have to understand this concept very nicely. The concept is that, for example, it's actually called, it's actually a plateau principle in the steady state. What they speak about this in the steady state is, if you give, for example, I am taking a dose every morning or every morning and evening, BD, I'm taking a dose BD. Now my dose is fixed. My dose is fixed. I'm talking right now about the steady state. My dose is fixed. I am taking every morning, every evening, every morning, every morning, every evening. What will happen is my drug is still getting metabolized, but yeah, the plasma concentration is increasing. Once you increase the plasma concentration of the drug, your rate of elimination will start also, isn't it? You will also start eliminating the drug, because amount of drug will start entering the organ and that amount of drug will start leaving the organ. That means my rate of elimination will start proceeding. But one state will occur when your rate of taking the drug which you have taken in the morning, evening, it will become equal to your rate of elimination. It will become equal to rate of elimination, meaning thereby your plasma concentration will attain a, like this. Let me show it on a graph. It will become like this. This is the steady state. When your plasma concentration is becoming, this is the half-life. How will you understand? And this state, it will take me at least 5 half-lives to reach. Okay, and it was depending on your dose rate also. Okay, how will you understand? Okay, so in the sense of first order reaction, what is this first order kinetics telling me? First order kinetics is telling me that F for first, I remember it percentage, F for fraction. What is fraction? Fraction is equal to percentage. First order kinetics tell me what percentage of drug is eliminated at a particular point of time. What amount of drug is being eliminated at a particular per unit time. So fraction. So first order. So let me give the formula. Rate of elimination is directly proportional to what? Plasma concentration. Order here is 1, so I will say 1. So rate of elimination is directly proportional to plasma concentration. Let us prove it. For example, I have 100 mg of drug. I have 100 mg of drug that is getting reduced to 50 mg in 1 hour. Then I am getting reduced to 25 mg in another 1 hour. Then I am getting reduced to 12.5 in another hour. And then it is reducing to 6.25 in another 1 hour. So how many half-lives? How many half-lives? Again that half-life. And tell me, you are decreasing how much? How much you are minusing? 50 mg. How much you are eliminating? 50 mg. How much you are eliminating? You are 50% eliminating, isn't it? You have a constant rate of elimination, isn't it? Here you have 50 mg. Here you have how much? 25 mg. Here you have 12.5 mg. Here you have 6.25 mg. That means with each rate of elimination, with each half-life, you are decreasing the concentration to 50%. And in the half-life itself, 50% is getting eliminated. That means your constant 50%, use the word percent for first order. Constant percentage is getting eliminated. constant percentage is getting eliminated. That means the percentage is constant throughout. No, it is the percentage, is like this. If I take it in terms of rate, let us take it in terms of rate. Rate, what was the rate from here? How much is eliminated? 50 mg in 1 hour. So I will say 50 mg in 1 hour, isn't it? How much is eliminated from this point to this point? 25 mg per hour. How much is eliminated from this? 12.5 mg per hour. Okay. So is the rate, it's not constant actually, it's the first order. No, remember, you are increasing. First you had 100 mg, but how much you were able to eliminate? 50 mg. Now you have 50 mg, you have only now 20 mg eliminated. Now you have 25 mg and only 12.5 eliminated. So the more concentration you increase of the drug, the more will be eliminated. See here, 100 mg was here. Now this 100 mg is getting changed to 50 mg. 100 minus 50 is 50. So you have eliminated 50 mg. Now from 50 to 25, you have eliminated 25. That means when your plasma concentration was less, you eliminated less. That means when your plasma concentration was less, 50 mg, you have eliminated less. Meaning thereby, the first order kinetics follows the principle of rate of elimination is directly proportional to plasma concentration. Now I take clearance. Let us take all the three parameters to understand them, because they are saying the first order is telling us that. Second point I want to explain is, second point they are telling is our clearance is constant. They are saying clearance is equal to constant in first order. Let us check. We know from the formula clearance is equal to rate of elimination divided by plasma concentration. Now rate of elimination, where is the rate of elimination? How much? What is the rate of elimination? Can you tell us what is the rate of elimination? 50 per hour. What is the plasma concentration at that time? 100 per hour. That was 100 mg at that time, isn't it? So 50 by 100 is 1 by 2. Now I take another. Let us take the clearance of the other part. Going from 50 to 25 mg, going from 50 to 25 mg, what was the rate of elimination? It was again 25 per hour, isn't it? I eliminated 25. This 25 per hour divided by what is now the plasma concentration? 50. Now 50 mg is the plasma concentration. So 25 ones are 25 twos are 50. Again half. My clearance is half again. Again taking from 25 to 12.5. 25 to 12.5 mg. Once I am going from 25 to 12.5 mg per hour, that means I am eliminating 25. How much? Half. That means half has been eliminated. That means 12.5 has been eliminated per hour. That means what was the concentration at that time? 25. This will also come half. That means my clearance is constant. We have proved it. Clearance remains constant in first order kinetics. And remember one concept. Please remember one concept. T half is also T half is also constant. See, T half is constant. So will you remember in the first order kinetics is clearance constant, T half constant, rate directly proportional to plasma concentration. You don't need to remember anything for the AIIMS exam. Directly remember the concept. You can get it. Again, let me talk about the zero. Zero means hero. Zero means hero. Means hero always worried about the amount. Amount of drug which is constant. Here the amount of drug is constant. Means my amount of drug, constant amount of drug is getting eliminated. My constant amount of drug is getting eliminated per unit time. But in first order kinetics, we were concerned about the percentage, the fraction. Now let us take the formula. Rate of elimination is directly proportional to plasma concentration raised to the power order. Rate of elimination is directly proportional to PC raised to the power 0. Anything raised to 0 is equal to 1. That means rate of elimination will be independent of plasma concentration. Means my clearance will be more at low concentration. How? Let us take another example. Let me take the same example. Why not to compare these two? I have 100 mg of drug, and this 100 mg is becoming 80 mg in 1 hour. Famous example we have been, using in our MBBS school life, isn't it? It was so, enjoyable in the first day of pharmacology. We used to do some mathematics that, yeah, we have some relief also. So 100 mg gets, for example, 80 mg. 80 mg gets reduced to 60 mg. Same time. 60 mg gets reduced to 40 mg. 40 mg gets reduced to 20 mg. R is same, R is same. Let us take the same concept here. Let us take the first parameter, that is rate. What is the rate of elimination? From 100 to 80, you have eliminated how much? 20 mg. So I will say 20 has been removed in 1 hour. Simple. Now in the second half-life, second hour, 80 to 60, that means I have eliminated again what? 20 in 1 hour. From 60 to 40, I have again removed 60 minus 40 is 20. So 20 again per hour. 40 to 20, I have taken. So can I see the rate of elimination is constant? It is not dependent on the plasma concentration. Rate is remaining constant. So can I say it is a non-linear kinetics? It is a non-linear kinetics. Zero order kinetics is a non-linear kinetics. While as first order is a linear kinetics. It is following. It is following. Let me take the second parameter, clearance. Clearance is equal to what? Rate of elimination divided by plasma concentration. What was the rate of elimination in the first? What was the rate of elimination? Yeah, what was the rate of elimination? Please contribute. I hope you are not sleeping. I have worked a lot. You should help me as being a doctor. Yes. Rate of elimination, calculate how much? So 20 divided by 100. Isn't it? 2 ones are 2 5s are 10. Isn't it? I have to actually take the rate of elimination divided by plasma concentration. What was the plasma concentration at that time? So it will be coming around, clearance will come around, I think some 0.20, 0.20. And if I go down from the mathematical principle, if I take the rate of elimination, that will become something, the rate of elimination will get to 0.25. Then it will get, I think, to 0.33, isn't it? And then here it will again come what? 0.50, isn't it? So what is happening is clearance is, so in the first step, it was 0.20 when your concentration was 100 mg. And in the second you had 80 mg, your clearance increased. That means it's an inverse relationship. Your clearance is more at less concentration of that drug. If you have less concentration of drug, your clearance is more. If you have high concentration of drug, your clearance is less, isn't it? Okay. T half you can understand, isn't it? How much is the T half? How to calculate the T half? Yeah. Now tell me one thing. It is so easy. It is so easy to calculate. Why are you so much worried? See, in one half life, how much you are eliminating? So let me take 100 to 80 to 60 to 40 to 20. Here, what you were doing is how much time, what is half-life? Half-life tells me in what time I will take the concentration to half. That means in the first order reaction, if you see, I was having the half concentration in 1 hour. But here, if you see, this is 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour. Where will I come? If I want to become half, where will I come? 100 to 80, 80 to 60, that means around here. So I will become half at this point. I will become half at this point. So how many half-lives? 1 plus 1 is 2. So it took me around 2.3 or 2.4 half-lives to become half in my zero order kinetics. Isn't it? Isn't it? And now from this second half, I want to become what? 25, isn't it? So I will be around this half-life. So my half-life will be now But first it was 2.5 and now I am around again around some 2 half-lives. So again some 2 half-lives. So from 2.5 I have decreased to 2. That means again my half-life is something directly proportional to plasma concentration, isn't it? If I have high plasma concentration, I will have more half-life. I will have more half-life, isn't it? But only for the zero order kinetics. So that means half-life is low at low concentration and half-life is more at more concentration. So you should remember which drugs are following zero kinetics. So we have what a favorite mnemonic, what? 0 watt power, isn't it? Power, what is the unit of power? So how we remember is, or some people remember it like PAO. Okay, so you can remember it like this. So which drugs? W is for warfarin, A is for alcohol, aspirin, T for tolbutamide, T for theophylline, P for phenytoin. Okay, and you can add heparin also because warfarin also an anticoagulant, heparin also an anticoagulant. So warfarin, heparin, A for alcohol, aspirin, T for tolbutamide, and T for theophylline. Okay, how able to understand? Remember, first order kinetics percentage, zero order kinetics amount, first order kinetics percentage, zero order kinetics amount. In the zero order kinetics, the rate of elimination is independent of plasma concentration. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture and there is no doubt. I hope so. I haven't kept a place for any doubt. Please practice it at home. Practice this like this the same way like I practiced 100 to same thing and calculate by yourself how is it possible conceptually that the half-life is getting less at less concentration and more at high concentrations. So thank you very much. I will, if you haven't subscribed to my videos, please subscribe to the channel Chambers. In the next video, we will be continuing the discussion, further discussions on general pharmacology. Thank you and bye bye.